link later. Okay, so welcome to our, what would have been like a live new parent orientation. So pre-COVID, we would have been here on campus and one of the beautiful ballrooms here on campus, and the parents would have been down the hall and the students would have been in the ballroom, and we'd have done all these activities. So this year, what we did is we did our orientation A group last Tuesday, B group on Thursday, and they did a lot of the same things, but instead of like cross the line where you're walking past someone, it was stand up in your chair, which was, so we did some renditions that were socially distanced and safe, but still did a lot of back to school stuff with our returning students and our new students. We did all our orientation just a little bit differently. Well, the piece for the parents is one of the pieces that we wanted to make sure we offered you the opportunity to sit in, listen, even if you're watching from home like this evening because we've taped it. A lot of this will feel like information you've heard before, but I think sometimes having context of having a student walking in the shoes of an OEC student helps you with these pieces. And then because it's recorded, you can always reference back at your earliest convenience or later on 3 months down the road to just see what did Ms. Bellairs actually say. That's kind of a nice feature. And when we do our live parent meetings, we don't have that feature. So it actually really is kind of nice. So if you have questions along the way, I'm going to monitor the questions through the chat. So you'll chat the questions to Carly and I. And Ms. Bellairs is going to focus on the presentation part. I'm going to keep track on my handy dandy paper and pencil notebook where I take your questions and then I will organize them into categories, and then I will make sure that I then, as a panelist, pose these questions to Ms. Bellairs so that, you know, she can answer them for us. When we get further on into the semester, my hope is that we'll be able to have a guest speaker like a college counselor come in for an evening or an afternoon, again, even if it's taped, and we'll have an opportunity to submit questions ahead of time to that person. But sometimes it's helpful to also hear from the college counseling team, but Ms. Bellairs, she knows her stuff, so we're in good hands. So with that, everyone in your living rooms, in your office, in your car, please give Ms. Bellairs a warm round of applause. Woo! Take it away.
All right, thank you. So yeah, this is for new parents. A lot of it are things that I went over during our intake meetings, but I know that there's like a lot going on, lots of information, and there are some new tidbits that are in here as well. So like Ms. Newman said, some of it's going to feel familiar and some of it might be a little bit new. At the very end of the presentation, I have like all of the ways to get a hold of me. So if you have questions that come up, you can reference that. Then of course you guys, I'm sure I'll have Ms. Newman's information. So just kind of kick this off, the big kind of cornerstones of OEC are college, culture, and community. So college is hopefully fairly self-explanatory. We are on a college campus. All of our students take college courses, and we are an early college. So really helping students get prepared for the college world and what that looks like. Culture and community, I think, go really well hand in hand, especially with our school. We've had to be very creative this year, coming up with ways to integrate that culture and community into our school with the pandemic and making sure things are safe. But we take a lot of time to build up the community and the culture of our school. So making sure that our school is a place that kids feel comfortable to be themselves. It's a place where they can have conversation with one another, that they can be vulnerable, and that they can learn. That's what we really want. We also want our students to be givers and not takers, is a big line that you'll hear a lot of us say, because we want to have students who are giving back to the community. So we offer lots of ways for them to give back to both the school specifically, but then the greater community as a whole. So again, those are the 3 C's that really make up OEC. So we talk about some of the more formal rules. I'm going to go into those a little bit later, but then there's some of these other rules that are super important to OEC. So the first one is to be kind. Every student who is coming to OEC has chosen to be a part of OEC. So it's, you know, going through the application process, talking to former students and current students. And so everyone is coming from a different background. So it's really important to treat everyone with kindness, especially because we don't know what situation someone is coming from. So we want everyone to be treated with kindness at our school. So this continues to be a safe and pleasant place for everyone to be. The next part is taking responsibility for your learning and your grades. So that's a really important one. At the high school level, we can do a little bit more hand holding or nurturing. We try not to do that very often, but we can do that. But the college level, you're not going to get that. So having that responsibility for your learning is really important. So if you see or notice that you're struggling in a certain area, we want you to approach us and let us know that you're struggling so that way we can help you. If you are missing something in a college class, let us know so again we can get you on the right path and get you, students into a spot where they are doing well. And then taking that responsibility for your grades. So checking Power School, checking your college grades, making sure that the students know where they stand in their courses. So that way, if I ask them, oh, how are your grades? They're not like, I don't know. They actually know what their grades look like. So another big thing is checking your OEC and OCC email at least once a day. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute as well. But students have 2 email addresses that they are going to have as a student with us, as well as their personal one if they have a personal email. What I tell students is that they should try to find a way to link all 3 together so that way they just have one spot to check their email. Their high school teachers, myself and Ms. Newman, are going to email their OEC email address. That's their West Bloomfield account. Their college professors and counselors are only going to email to their OCC account and will usually only accept emails from their OCC account. So information that's really important is coming to these 2 different sources. So keeping up with that is extremely important. If they are confused about what our high school schedule is or what's going on, you will frequently hear Ms. Newman or myself saying, did you check your email? Because that's kind of what it comes back to. So kind of mentioned this with the Be Kind, but we have students who are coming from all over Oakland County who've come from all different schools, whether it's homeschool, private school, public school. We have families that live all the way up in Holly and families that come from Oak Park. So the whole range of Oakland County. So when we talk about diversity, we mean that in every facet of diversity. So, racial diversity, religious diversity, gender diversity, all those different components that make a person who they are, and seeking to understand and to get to know that person is extremely important to us. So I'll talk about the credit range in a little bit as well, but every high school student gets a credit range for how many college credits they are able to take the following semester at OCC. And that range is really a reflection of that student's history. So if a student has done really well academically, they're going to be able to take more college courses than a student who has struggled. And the reason is that we're trying to make sure that they are in a good spot academically, that they're getting the best grades possible, but they're also in a good place mentally, because if they're taking on too much stress that's not realistic, that's not going to put them in a good position mentally, which is extremely important and crucial. So we talked about this just a second ago as well, and how important our community is. And so there is this expectation to give back. We have tons of volunteer opportunities. Typically, it's going to look a little bit different this year, I'm sure, but typically we have tons of volunteer opportunities, and we want students to get involved and to give back. We are a really, really small school as far as like staff goes, but also as far as students go. So it really takes all of us working together to make the school run smoothly and to make to provide opportunities that everyone wants. So we want students to give back so that we can keep providing awesome opportunities. The other big thing is, of course, go to class, and with that, arrive on time. So it's a little bit harder to not do that right now because we're monitoring the hallways and like really trying to make sure everyone's where they are at the right time because we have to. But it is so important to go to class, and it's so important to arrive on time. We'll talk about the attendance policy here in a minute, but if you are missing class and not arrive on time, you're missing out on crucial information. And kind of to go back to the responsibility for your learning, the high school is going to be a little bit more understanding than the college, where the college, if you are late to a class, you might get locked out of that class, and that's on you. Again, this isn't when we're going back in person. And you have to be in class every single time it meets. So, we've had professors who haven't even taken a hospital note as an excuse to not be in class, which I find far too extreme, but it is up to the professor to decide that. So getting into that habit of being in class when you're supposed to be there and being on time is extremely important. So then this idea of like no grit, no pearls. So you have to have kind of like the grit or the not so great stuff to make this beautiful thing at the end. This is a great school. I love working here. I love how much the students love being here, but there are hard times. And with any great thing, you have to put in hard work. There are going to be obstacles, but all those obstacles and that hard work is really going to make that student all the more better prepared for whatever their future holds. So if that's going to a 4-year school, if it's going right into the workforce, all of those skills that they're building here at OEC will help them moving forward, and they'll have this great high school experience and college experience. And then the last thing that's just so important is communicate. So it kind of goes along with the email, but the communication is a two-way street. So we sometimes, we will flood you with information because we want to make sure that you're getting that information. But where we get concerned is if we're not hearing anything back from a student. So if we are reaching out to them and not hearing back, or reaching out to family and not hearing back, we start to get really worried because we want them to communicate to us. I mentioned this in all of the intake meetings that as soon as a student starts to struggle, we want you to tell us what's going on. Not because you're going to get in trouble, that's not the case at all, but we want to know what's happening so that way we can help. Where you will see some frustration if there's not communication, because there's so much trust and responsibility that happens with our students, we need to know that we can count on them to communicate back to us. So those are kind of just like the less formal rules, but here are some more of the more formal pieces. And so the first thing I want to talk about is late or sick and kind of our attendance policy with that. So a big question that we get is, if I'm coming in late, does my parent need to sign me in? What needs to happen? And even in non-COVID times, a parent does not need to sign a student in. So what we expect the student to do is to check in at the office, go to class, and then make sure a parent calls Miss Kelly, that's the school's number, and to make sure that we know and to let us know that this student is coming in late. One thing to know is that if a student is 10 minutes or more late to a class, they are marked absent. So our class periods are really short. We need them to know, we need them to be in class as much as possible. And marking them absent after 10 minutes is how we can signal to both the student and the parent, and as a reminder to the teacher that they have missed a good portion of that course. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. If a student is out sick, please, a parent should call Miss Kelly as soon as you know. So if it's the night before and you leave a message, that's totally fine. If it's early in the morning and you leave a message, that's great too. But as soon as you know, please call us. Then the students need to email their teachers. So our expectation is that that student is reaching out to their teachers, finding out how, what's going on in class, the homework, the assignments, and doing that on their end. This is not something, unless the student is incapacitated or can't do it, we expect the student to take that initiative. This is especially true with college professors. If a student is absent, the only way it is marked excused is if we have a doctor's note or a parent who calls in. So if a student comes in and they're like, oh, I was gone yesterday, we can't mark them excused until we've gotten that communication from a parent or a doctor. And then the big thing to know is that students shouldn't leave campus unless they let someone know. So they have to leave early for a doctor's appointment or something comes up, that's fine. We just need to know, so please call in and let us know that they are leaving early so we can make sure that we know where students are at all times. Oh, I guess to go back really quick to attendance, it's going to look a little bit different this year, but in a typical year, when a student meets certain absence thresholds, so if they've missed like 8 days of school, I send home a letter, just kind of check in and see what's going on. There's another threshold at 12 and then another at 20, each with different implications. But attendance is something that we check and we monitor. And even if those 8 absences are all excused, we are still going to reach out just again to check in and see if there's something that we can do to help and make it easier to get to school. So that's just something to keep in mind, especially in the future years. So emails and accounts. I mentioned that that students need to be checking their emails every day. There's a few different layers. So students have a West Bloomfield email address. So this is something that is set up by the district. It's an automatically created email address for them. There's a password that we give them. We are trying to make sure that all students got that information last week or today. If they have not set up or don't have their West Bloomfield email address, please have them let their teacher know or stop by my office and see me so I can print off directions of how to access that West Bloomfield email address. Power School is how students are going to check their grades, check their attendance, and just keep up with that piece. That same form that I print off with their West Bloomfield email address also has directions for Power School. Our hope is that, if they have a phone, that they'll download that app so they can check it on a regular basis, or they're checking it on their computer ideally once a day, just to kind of stay informed. Parents, you have a separate parent portal account, so you are able to log in and see their grades and see their attendance and get that information as well. If you don't have the information for how to set that up, feel free to reach out to me, and I can send you an email with a PDF of those directions of how to set that up. So Canvas is a platform that we are using for the virtual component, so that's where teachers are going to post lessons, and that's where information is going to come from. That is, I believe, connected to the West Bloomfield email address. So that's just, again, super important to make sure you have your West Bloomfield email set up and know how to access that. And then the OCC account has a separate email. That's something that they have to set up themselves. They should have gotten an email when they registered with OCC, giving them some steps of how to do that. If they are confused and can't set that email, please let me know, and I can help walk them through that so they have their OCC email all set up. But that is how they communicate with their professors and how the professors will communicate with them. One story that we kind of fall back on is that there was a student who was in a class at OCC. The professor emailed that student or the whole class and that an exam date was being changed. That student did not read their email, so they missed their exam. And so they got a 0 on that exam. Because again, students are responsible for checking their emails. So if they have not set up this OCC email, make sure they stop by and see me so I can help them with that. So to talk about the college credits, and then that will lead us into how kind of the high school and college relationship works. Like I mentioned, I set a credit range for each student before each college semester. And so I meet with students 3 times a year individually, so we can look at how their high school classes are going, talk about college grades, and then set that credit range. The minimum is what they have to be in. So if there's a minimum number, they have to be in that number of credits in order to be considered a full-time student, which is how we're able to get funding. So that's extremely important. The maximum is what seems manageable based on the factors I mentioned before, their academic experience, what our experience has shown us as a school, so that's their range. They cannot go outside of that range without talking to either myself or Ms. Newman. So we go through and try to make sure that students have complied with that, but that's just a really important thing to know. So even if families want to pay for their student to take extra classes, they cannot, they have to stay in that range. So each year that students are with us, they typically are taking fewer high school courses and picking up more college credits. So it helps them to slowly gain that experience in the college world. And again, help them with that balance of managing both high school and college classes. So this timeline helps to illustrate how the college and the high school are different and how we work together. So the high school has 2 semesters. We have semester 1 that starts end of August and goes through mid-January, and semester 2 that starts mid-January and goes through the end of June. I need to change that date. I forgot to change that date. I'm sorry, because June 16th is not our last day. But that's how the high school works. We have 2 semesters. The college has 3 semesters. They have fall term, winter term, and summer term. Fall term started today, so it's at the end of August, and it goes through early December. And then winter term picks up in January and goes through the end of April, and then summer term starts early May. So that's how their semesters work. And we each have different breaks throughout that time. So you can see before the start of every college semester, students meet with me. We talk about that credit range. Once they get that credit range, they meet with an OCC counselor. Then once they have done those 2 meetings, then they register for their college classes. So I will email students out when it's time for us to meet, letting them know that it's also time to meet with an OCC counselor. And then it's up to them to schedule those meetings. If it's been a little while, I haven't seen them, I'll track that student down, but it's up to them. And they should really get on that as soon as possible, because once we can start meeting, they are typically able to register for college classes. The longer they wait to meet with me and their OCC counselor, the fewer college options that are going to be available. So they might get stuck taking a course they don't want at a time they don't want. So again, the student who is registering earlier is going to have more options that they want available to them. And so you can see kind of the timelines of when they would meet with me and their OCC counselor. So like Ms. Newman said, we're going to try to get an OCC counselor to talk with you to kind of give some more information, but I just wanted to kind of give this overview about that. So one thing to know is that meeting with an OCC counselor is confidential between the student and the counselor. The only way a parent is able to join in that meeting is if the student invites that parent. But you as a parent cannot show up and meet with a counselor and get information about your student. That's not how the college end works. The only time that they would break that confidentiality is in a case of emergency, but otherwise those meetings are entirely confidential. When they meet with that counselor, they will review the credit range that has been approved by myself, and then look at any college classes that are required for the high school component. There's time to discuss academic plans, like if a student is pursuing an associate's degree or looking at the Michigan Transfer Agreement or a certificate. So they'll help students go through those plans and what their goals are. Counselors will assist in like picking out specific classes and can help students look at what classes are most likely to transfer to the schools that they're interested in. They give input on classes and academic plans, but then they are also licensed counselors who can provide emotional support as well. So there's a really great team of OCC counselors that I really enjoy working with. Students really like them. And so if they have that connection with that counselor, that's a great person to talk to. So if the student's feeling stressed or overwhelmed, they of course have me, but they have that support as well, which is really nice because they are amazing. So we talked about OCC and OEC. So now when thinking about those things together, which is how you should always kind of think about it, is it's really important to pay attention to the two different calendars. So we are not on the same calendar. This was the first year that we actually started before the college, which I think is kind of great because it gave us time to talk to students, to make sure they're in the right credits, get everything situated before the college courses started. But some things to pay attention to is that OCC is in session when OEC is on spring break. So our spring breaks do not align. The college winter break is longer than the high school, which is kind of nice because they get a little longer break with their college courses. And we follow West Bloomfield School District when it comes to snow days. So if the district has a snow day, then we have a snow day. We do not, so I think sometimes people think we follow Farmington Hills because we're located there, but we don't follow Farmington, we follow West Bloomfield School District. So just keep that in mind. But OCC rarely has snow days. So if there's a huge snowstorm and they get high school classes canceled, they still need to check on their college course to see if that's in session, and it usually is. It's very rare that the college is canceled. So that's an important thing for them to remember. And we also try to send out lots of reminders and updates as we get that as well, but that is on the student to double check that piece. So with the graduation requirements, this is something that I went over at intake, and this is something that I will revisit with students when we meet to make sure they're checking off those pieces. But we require the Michigan Merit Curriculum. So that's what any high school student needs to graduate in the state of Michigan. And that's what this chunk here is. So that's 4 credits of math, 4 credits of English, 3 credits of science, 3 credits of social studies. And within those requirements are specific courses that they have to take, like Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2 for math. Students then need a half credit each of gym and health. They need 1 credit of visual performing or applied arts, 2 credits of the same world language. For us, so that right there is the Michigan Merit Curriculum. For us, students have to be in focus every year that they're with us. And that's a class that builds skills both in and out of the classroom. They do lots of career and college exploration, how to apply for jobs and making your resume, going on interviews, how to be successful in class. So it's a really great course. Then they have a capstone type experience in their 13th seminar class. That's their last year that they're with us. The online learning experience is done in Focus 12, as well as there's an online piece that happens in other courses as well. And then they have to have at least 30 college credits. So at other high schools, there's a certain number of elective credits that you have to get or total high school credits that you have to get. We are a little bit different that we look at these core requirements that the Michigan Merit Curriculum requires, our requirements, and then we look at the college credits. So that 30 college credits is kind of like taking the place of the electives that you would think of at a different high school. So some of these requirements might be met through OCC courses. For example, if your student has not done gym or health, we don't offer that, so they take that course through the college. And that's something that when I met with them, I indicated to them, and it was on their scheduling document that got sent home as well. And that's not something that needs to be done right away. It just has to be done sometime between now and when they graduate from OEC. So that's something I remind them about until they have completed that piece. So with the high school requirements, comes the conversation about GPAs. So for your high school GPA at OEC, all high school courses that a student took, whether they start here in 9th grade or they were somewhere else in 9th and 10th grade, those are all included in their GPA. How we do it, it's kind of like a more straight grading system. So A equals 4.0, B is a 3.0, C is a 2.0, D is a 1.0, and F is 0. We don't differentiate between pluses or minuses, so that's just kind of what it is. All college courses are included in the high school GPA, so every single college course that your student takes is included in their high school GPA, and that was at the request of colleges and universities. So we've followed their request and done met as a group of early colleges to make that decision. But some college courses are weighted. So at high schools, you have the discretion to choose what classes are weighted and what are not. Again, kind of going at the advice of colleges and universities, we did weight some college courses, and those are courses that we know from our experience from talking with OCC and from just working with the college as a whole that we know are more difficult than others. So a lot of 4-credit courses and some 3-credit courses are weighted, and we have a full list of all of those courses so that way people can know. But lots of math and science courses are weighted, and then some other ones as well, just to help to demonstrate that those are more rigorous courses, and those are indicated on the transcript if they are weighted. If a student chooses to retake a course, their previous grade isn't shown on the transcript, it's replaced with an R, and the higher grade is shown, and only that higher grade is in the GPA. So for the college, they have their own separate transcript and their own separate GPA at the college. So all of their college courses are included in their GPA, which makes sense. I'm just noticing this big typo or the space in between the I and the N and in. Sorry about that. They do differentiate between pluses and minuses. So an A is a 4.0, but an A minus is like a 3.72 something. So that's a big difference between our GPAs. If a student retakes a college course, both grades are still shown on the transcript, but only the higher grade is in the GPA. So that's another difference just to keep in mind. So those are kind of the breakdowns of that. When it comes time to apply to 4-year universities, they will have 2 transcripts to send over, both their high school and the college, but I'll go way more into depth when they get to 13 seminar about that. So at this point, students should have met with me. They couldn't be here if they hadn't, so they have all done that, which is great. They should have applied to OCC and sent Mrs. Kelly their OCC ID number. I believe almost everyone has. If you're getting phone calls from Ms. Kelly, please call her back. We need that OCC ID because if we don't have that, when a student goes to register for a class, they get kicked out of that class because they aren't connected to us. So it's super important. We need their ID for a whole bunch of different things. So if you have not sent that to Ms. Kelly, please do so right away. They should have created an OCC email account. So like I said, if they haven't, please reach out to me and I can help them make sure that that's set up. And then 11th graders should have met with a college counselor and registered for an OCC class. I think we've caught everyone, but if there happens to be anyone who has not done this step that's an 11th grader, they need to text Ms. Newman right now because college classes started today. Some start a little bit later, but we want to make sure that they are in a college course. So if they have not done this step in an 11th grader, please reach out to us right away so we can help them with that. So a couple of items that I just wanted to make sure I bring to your attention so that way if there's anything that we need to know, we can get that taken care of. When you applied or filled out documentation to enroll in West Bloomfield School District, you provide a whole bunch of information, and in those forms, let them know if your student had healthcare needs that needed to be addressed, had a 504 and IEP, if English is not their first language. But if you ticked off any of those things, please, if you could, reach out to me just so that way we can make sure that we have all of the information, especially when it comes to things like allergies or special accommodations that students need. We want to make sure that we are getting those done and taken care of and addressing those right away. So if there's anything that meets those items, please reach out to me so we can make sure that your student's getting everything that they need to be successful. Another thing I wanted to bring up is that when I met with students, there was a guideline for approved college credit that needed to be initialed by the student and signed by the student and the parent. I have quite a few of those, but I'm still missing some. So for the students that I'm missing that document for, I will be sending that home as a paper copy and electronic one, because we do need that on file to make sure that we are on the same page when it comes to what the high school can pay for. And then a couple notes, because I didn't really know where to put these things. So this is just my page of random thoughts, I guess. But when it comes to texting during the school day, we know that things come up. We know that students need to reach out to people and that you're reaching out to them. But please know that if they are not responding, it might be because they're like taking a test in class or doing something in class that they can't respond. If you need to reach your student and they're not responding to you, please call the office so that way we can get a hold of them as well. Because in some of their classes, they won't be allowed to text back right away, especially when it comes to the college courses. So in some college classes, if they are caught having their phone out, they could be kicked out of the class for the day. They could get points deducted for them. So that's just something to be mindful of. So just keep that in mind. And then another thing that I just wanted to point out is when it comes to emailing professors and OCC counselors, only students should be emailing their professors and counselors. So if you as a parent want information about those college classes, talk to your child, but you should not email as the parent professors or counselors. You are welcome to email the high school teachers, myself, Ms. Newman. Of course, please reach out to us, but it's just very different in the college setting. So that's just something to be mindful of. So I talked about that document that I needed signed and returned back, and that goes over what OEC pays for and what we don't pay for. And so this slide kind of recaps that. We can't pay for any consumable materials. So those would be things like art supplies, lab manuals, culinary equipment, things that a student would use up throughout the course of their class. We cannot pay for that. Students are welcome to take summer classes that start later in the summer. We can only pay for summer courses that start before our last day of school. So last year that was June 16th. So if someone wanted to take a class that started June 17th, they could, but they are responsible for paying for that. Item number 3 is talking about dropped classes. So in college, there's a really short window of time where students can drop a course and OEC gets our money back. That's during the 100% refund period. And it's typically just a week after a class begins. Students still need to let me know if they're going to drop a course, but if it's in that refund period, they can drop that and they don't get charged. If it's after that refund period, then they are charged the full amount for that course and you would get billed for that. And then college courses that are failed, again, I mentioned if a student starts to struggle, they need to let me or Ms. Newman know, as well as their parents, right away, so we can get them the help that they need. But if they do fail a college course, they are responsible for paying for that, and that would be another thing they get billed for. And we talked about the credit range, and so if a student signs up for more credits than their range allows, we do a lot to look at those registration forms and try to catch those things ahead of time. But if something happens and we miss that, or they sign up for more classes after we pull that information, they might be forced to drop those classes and then pay us back for that course. So again, that communication portion is just so important at our school, and it helps to reinforce the trust that we put in students. So I think these next slides kind of illustrate the different phases of having your kid, your child go to school, because when you start off, you are being very protective, making sure you're with them, guiding them along, right by their side. So I think that's like a lot of elementary school. And so then, in middle school, maybe you're starting to like not be quite as protective, taking off those training wheels, letting them go at their own pace, letting them kind of do their own thing. And then maybe like middle school, high school, start to kind of like let them go and really try on their own. And inevitably things happen and they might fall and they might hurt themselves and there's going to be mistakes. And I think it's just really important that students know that we expect this part to happen. They're high school students taking college courses. They're also people who have lives and things going on. So there's going to be those hard times and there's going to be mistakes that are made. And that's okay. In fact, that's great. We'd rather have them make those mistakes here with us where there's still some nurturing that goes on. So that way they are better prepared for when they go to a 4-year school or when they go into the workforce. So they've had these experiences that have made it so they know how to make mistakes and they know how to recover from those mistakes. And that's what we really want to see, is that growth and that learning afterwards, because we expect there to be mistakes and that bumps along the road. But hopefully then throughout OEC, and then once they leave, they are ready to ride on their own and can be successful wherever they go next. That is our ultimate goal, is to make them successful, productive, happy adults. And so whatever we can do to help aid in that process, we are excited to be a part of that journey with them. And so then hopefully, they're maybe running a marathon someday. And so when they're out in the real world and have those experiences, we hope they come back and visit us to tell us about their successes and their struggles. And we are still there for them even when they graduate. But our hope is that, again, that they're able to do amazing things once they leave us. So with that, we don't expect that, you send your kid off to school to not do anything to support them. We want, it's like a team that helps them. And so the students that are here, the supports that are here at school, I tried to list here, and there's tons of others. So I didn't even really talk about how supportive our teachers are, because they are amazing and they are going to work with your students all the time. They notice the students having a bad day. Our teachers are the kind of people who are going to check in on your student, and they're going to be very concerned and involved in their lives because they care very deeply about them. And the same is true for Ms. Newman and Ms. Kelly, and really everyone who works at our school. Everyone's very involved and really wants to see your student do amazing things. For my end, our meetings, when I meet with a student, they're mostly confidential. There's things where I would, of course, have to break that confidentiality, and I tell students when that happens. And they can either set up meetings with me ahead of time or just drop into my office. Really, if my door is open, they can just come on in. With their OCC counselor, like I mentioned, that is a confidential appointment. There are 5 full-time and a handful of adjunct or part-time counselors. But with them, they do need to set up a meeting ahead of time, and those meetings would all be virtual. If our state or when the college returns back to meeting in person, then they can do some more drop-ins. But for right now, they do need to set that meeting ahead of time. For academic supports, there's NHS tutors. You can, of course, talk and meet with a teacher, talk and meet with me, Ms. Newman as well, of course. And so there are these supports that we can offer. And then for college supports, there's something called the Academic Support Center, which they have their own link on OCC's website, and they offer really amazing academic supports for students. They've done a lot to make sure that things are virtual. So there's virtual tutoring, there's virtual academic seminars where they're teaching, having a whole session on how to take notes or how to study for a test. And those are things that students can participate in. There's study skill seminars and there's study groups. So there's tons of supports that are offered to all students. And then of course they can email and meet with a professor for additional help. If they're ever worried about sending that email or how to write that email to a professor, they can always send a draft to me or Ms. Newman. We are happy to read those and make any adjustments to help them get their message across. But there are really tons of supports that the high school and the college offer. So if you are worried about your student, always feel free to reach out to me or Ms. Newman or their teachers, and we can get back to you and let you know and work together as a team to make sure that students are successful and doing as well as they possibly can. So this is my information. I put my number up there. Feel free to call whenever. I am going to be remote on Wednesdays. Sometimes I'll be in the office, sometimes I'll be at home. But of course, leave a message. This is my email, which we'll be checking on Wednesdays and every other day of the week. I do have a Twitter account, although I haven't been super active lately, but I think it's just because of the summer. But I post stuff about scholarships and colleges, and if there's jobs or cool events that are happening, I do post that information. And then I have a monthly newsletter that I send out to all the emails that are listed in PowerSchool. So starting in September will be my first one. So if you don't get that, make sure you reach out to me so you can make sure that we have your correct information in PowerSchool. But I try to communicate a lot and any information I can. But if you ever have any worries or concerns, please reach out to me. And we can make sure we get those addressed and have a conversation about that, because we are getting to know your students. And so we want to have as much information as possible to help us help them. So with that, what questions have come up, Ms. Newman?
Okay, so feel free to add questions to the chat, but I'll go through the ones that have come up so far. One of our parents said, really appreciates the giving spirit of the school. Do we have a junior optimist club? The answer is we do not have a junior optimist club. We have other clubs that our students use for acts of service and for giving, but that is not one that we currently have. And clubs are going to look a little different this year because of the COVID. So we will be rolling that out to students as we get ourselves a little bit more organized with clubs, but we're still doing service learning. That is definitely happening. So I'm adding to the questions, keep putting them in there. So I'm going to go through in the order they came in. Summer term, Miss Bellairs, are students required to take the shorter, like May, June term, or can they take an extended term, say May through August?
That is a great question. So a couple of pieces to that. Summer classes are never required. So summer classes are optional courses. And so that's when it's up to the student and the parent if they would like to take those. So if a student is going to take summer classes, they can take either session. So if they want to take a shortened class, they can. If they want to take a longer class, they can. As long as the start date is before our last day of high school, then they're good. With the caveat that there are some classes that they should not take as a shortened session. So for example, if a student wanted to take Calculus 1 over the summer as an 8-week session, I would say that's a terrible idea and you should take it as a 15-week session, just because there's some courses that are really hard to condense into 8 weeks. Our students have shown that it's really hard to manage. So in order to, again, set them up for success, that's when they would get the advice from me or the directive from me to not take some classes over the shortened period. But as far as what we pay for, as long as it starts before our last day of high school, we pay for that.
Okay, I was texting one student back their answer, so I'll go back to that. Next question was, does OCC have an alert system? And the answer is yes. Students can sign up for the alert system. It can come through text. Those students that are taking CNS 1100, the public safety will actually come into that class via Zoom this year probably, and they'll explain that, but our 9th graders will make sure they're connected too, because we will talk about it in focus as well. Next question is for you, Ms. Bellairs. If someone comes in 11th grade, how will they get their 30 credits?
Yeah, so I'll first talk about 13th grade, because then you can kind of see right away how you're going to get a bunch of credits. So in 13th grade, students are in one high school class, that's 13th seminar. So the rest of their schedule is made up of college courses. So as a 13th grader, they need to be in at least 10 college credits per semester. So the minimum, as long as they're of course passing their classes, that a 13th grader would have during that 13th grade year is 20 credits. So they're getting a ton of credits their 13th grade year. And so kind of working backwards from that, in 12th grade, usually 12th graders are in 3 or 4 high school classes. So they're taking, between 4 and 10 college credits each semester. And then there's the summer semesters within that, which usually that range in 11th grade is between, it's usually like 4 credits in their 11th grade summer, and then 6 credits in their 12th grade summer. And then in 11th grade, their credit range is 1 to 3 for this first semester, and there would be 1 to 4, 1 to 5, depending on how they do. So you can see how 11th grade starts off kind of slow, and then it really ramps up in 12th grade, and then definitely in 13th grade. So we've had students who have started with us and who have earned an associate's degree, which is 62 credits. It's being really strategic and planning very carefully, and of course passing all of your classes and not dropping any classes is really crucial. But students are able to earn lots of credits even if they come in as an 11th grader.
Are OCC grades reflected in Power School?
No. Ish. So the terms for OCC is different than our terms. So right now, if you were to look at Power School, you'd see your students' classes, and in like real time, you're getting grade updates. That does not happen for the college. So for the college, some professors will update grades online using D2L. That is something that only the students have access to. So I can't see it. Ms. Newman can't see it. You as a parent, you don't have a parent login to see it. So that's something that only the students have access to. And then there's some professors who don't even use that system, who like show a student what grade they got on a test, and it's up to that student to like manually keep track of what grades they're getting. Once the college and high school semester are over, Then I go in and manually enter their college grades on their transcript. So if a student in PowerSchool is able to look at their historical grades, they would see that reflected, but not in that real-time piece that you're used to at the high school.
Do students stay with one OCC counselor, or can they change counselors?
They can change. So my recommendation is to try to find a counselor that you like. But once you find that counselor that you connect with, I recommend that you keep seeing that counselor because they'll get to know you better. Instead of like going and having to start over with each new person, you have that relationship and that foundation. If a student is struggling to find a counselor that they click with, I recommend that they can talk to other students and see who the students like, and then I can give them the ones that are the full-time ones because those are the ones I have the best relationship with, and that's usually a good place to start. But the adjunct counselors are amazing too. There's tons of really great options, which I think is a huge benefit to being a student here, is because you get all of those options for who you want to talk to, but they can change to answer the question shortly.
The next question I'll take is, what happens if a student tests positive for COVID? So every school in Oakland County, every public school has been assigned 1 or 2 nurses from Oakland Health Department, so Oakland County Health Department. So what would happen is if a student did receive a positive COVID test, is we would reach out to my fancy boss, right? And they reach out to the county, and then our nurse takes over from there. So we are doing a very good job of mapping where students are throughout the day. So we have seating charts. I know where students are in their off hours. I know where they are at lunch. They're either outside or they're like in an assigned space. So we have lots of ways that we'll be able to do contact tracing. So the nurse will tell us what to do. And what happens is on a case-by-case basis, because they will look at whether or not they consider that student having come into close contact, which is like 15 minutes within 6 feet radius of another student. And so they will take over from there. So literally it's case by case what they do. If they have us closed down for a period of time, if they quarantine certain students, it absolutely is case by case based on how long they were within 6 feet radius of other students or staff, and the contact tracing piece, and then what group, were they A, were they B? It just depends by students. Like a 13th grader would be very different than a student that travels throughout the whole school day. Mm-hmm. Next question was, is there town hall this week? Sort of. I haven't figured out what I'm doing for Wednesday yet. I have to be really honest with you. It was a lot just to get to today. So staff will tell you that I was sending emails at like 1:30 in the morning because we have like our bathroom rotations, you know, like every class releases a certain time to tell students to go wash their hands and if they need to use the restroom. And even though it seems easy to put those lists together, it just is time consuming to put them together in a concise way. My cleaning schedule, I think, is really good for Thomas. I'll call him my sanitation engineer, and then myself, because I'm his team partner. And so we have been working hard to get a couple things up, but we will be posting something on Wednesday. But Ms. Belaires and I are working on possibly doing a mental health screener just to try to get at where students are at emotionally. And so it's just important that whatever I post, students log in. So there'll be some sort of like way to take attendance. So last week it was log in and watch town hall, yay, go team, but then also fill out this survey so that I can get t-shirt sizes, because we're going to try to order t-shirts. So there'll be something that's active for students to do. And if I do a mini town hall session or something like that, it will be recorded so that students can watch it later. But it might just be watch this video, fill out the screener, tell us where you're at so that we can then reach out to students that we think need a little bit of extra attention. Next question is, how do 504s and IEPs work for the college? Ms. Belaires, please take that one.
Yeah, so if the student is new, just to kind of add this layer in, we will be setting up meetings to meet with that new student, go over their 504, what it looked like at their last school, and what changes, if any, need to happen to make it work for our school. And so when that meeting happens, we also talk about some of the nuances that happen at the college level and try to address those in the 504 or the IEP when it comes to the accommodations. And then, but students can turn in any sort of plan that they have into the access office, which is through the college. And what they do is they look at that student's plan, look at their disability and what accommodations that they need, and then they will tell you what is approved. So at the high school, we are pretty flexible and can like work with things, and we will work really hard to come up with creative accommodations and solutions. The college is going to be a little bit more rigid, and they ultimately have control over what accommodations can happen and what cannot. So that's just an important thing to keep in mind. Once the access office has that, then they disseminate that information to professors. But what we tell students is what they should also be doing when they have class is to introducing themselves to that professor. During this time, they'll probably look like an email saying like, by the way, not sure if you know, but I have these accommodations, just as like a little reminder to that professor. And so that's how that piece works. And then they do need to make that appointment with access at the start of every semester. So for our new students who are coming with the 504, I will be reaching out to them because how access looks this semester is different than it typically looks, just so they know what to do to make sure that things are on file and ready to go for the college level. But that's how that process works for OCC.
How does a student go about getting an OCC email?
So when they made their OCC account or applied to OCC, they should have gotten an email saying welcome to OCC, and that email should have provided some directions. However, if they can't find the email, that's totally fine. If they log into their student account, so their My OCC, go to the student menu. If you're on a computer, I don't know what it looks like on a phone, but if you're on a computer, on the left-hand side, like in the middle of the page, it says student email. If they click on that, it'll give them some steps for setting up their OCC email. One thing that I did notice with a student last week when we were trying to set that up is if they are on a Chromebook, because you're kind of logged into an account already with a Chromebook, because that's how you get it started, there can be a couple extra challenges. Doesn't happen for everyone, but if they're having those difficulties, make sure see if they're using a Chromebook, and if they are, and that's the only device that they have, come into my office and we can do it on my computer to get that OCC email address set up. If they also, on OCC's email, if in the search toolbox, you type in how to set up student email, they'll give you a really nice tutorial with step-by-step directions.
How many OEC teachers are there? Right now there are 5. So I have 5 teaching staff. I do have our Spanish program is going to be online this year through Edgenuity. We had a staffing change and I wasn't quite satisfied with the applicants for the Spanish position, so I'll just put it that way. So instead of settling, we are doing a virtual first semester, but I am being supported by one of the Spanish teachers in the district. So I have a Spanish teacher who works for the online school that will be assigned to us as a point 2, so that teacher will be logging in once a week to meet with students while they're going through the virtual experience. But to answer the question, we have 5 full-time teaching staff, and then I have 1 amazing counselor, 1 amazing secretary, and then myself. And then I am supported in the district with social work services, and I also have a teacher consultant that works with some of our students, but 5 full-time teaching staff. Any other questions for your panelists, Jennifer Newman and Carly Bellairs? Give me a moment in case you're typing, and if you're like me, you spell a word wrong, and instead of just going to the place and fixing it, you backtrack all the way and then fix it, so it takes a second to finish the thought. Wait. All right. If you do have any questions at any time, please do not hesitate to reach out to one of us. If you reach out to me and I don't know the answer, I'll forward it to Ms. Bellairs, and she does the same thing. So a really good working team. Ms. Kelly has a ton of knowledge that we don't even have. So sometimes we'll pose it to her, but please reach out. The question was, is Spanish 3 different? Spanish 3, those students will not have the same support from the teacher who is able to log in Zoom with the Spanish 1 class 1 day a week, each group 1 day a week, and then log in during Spanish 2 and Zoom with each group 1 day a week. Spanish 3 does not have that. So they would just be a normal online class, so not the same level of support. So that is a different conversation for those families.
And just looking at who sent that in, that the plan for your student would be the same that we talked about over the summer, because I think they were already going to do something a little bit different. So the plan would be the same for that student. Just
anything else for us? And again, it is recorded. So if you're like, I don't think that's what she said, and you just want to go back and watch it or put it on in the background while you're cooking dinner, feel free to do that. But we are here for you, and we will continue to over communicate. The question was, how are you doing? We are tired. We are very excited as a staff, but I think when you're really good at running a school, or you're really good at teaching in a school, and then, you know, the pandemic hits and you really have to think differently, it just takes longer and it takes more brain power. So I think we're just trying to make sure we catch everything so that we can stay open, because we really, really want to see your students in person. It is, if you can put it together in a healthy format, it is by far the best for their mental health, even if it's only 2 days a week. And our teachers are so good live. It was so exciting to hear them teaching today. And the new students I talked to, and I asked them, you know, how'd your day go? Did you have a favorite class? They just couldn't choose. Like, it was just really nice to see people, students content and happy to be somewhere. So we are excited, but thank you for asking. But we're excited to be here. Is there online classes tomorrow? So we are launching Canvas slowly. So I know the district has sent out like Canvas is ready to go. I have told my teachers that I want us to roll slowly. So we started last week with our half days. This week is our first like full day with each group where they see all their teachers, and the college classes are starting, which I think is a lot for 1 week. And then next week, Wednesday will be the first day that really, the Wednesday after Labor Day, all the teachers are posting to Canvas. So I think like Mr. Heffelbauer might have posted something just to like get into Canvas and see how it's feeling. But you will not have a lot of virtual work until the following week after Labor Day. We're really trying to slowly roll in, so that we don't overwhelm everybody, including the staff, because they're learning a new program, and they're doing a lot, you know, during that live session. So there isn't really online class tomorrow. There could be if you have a college class, but if you're a 10th grader, you'll have CNS 1100, and that's another list I have to prepare. I'll do that this evening, and I'll Miss Bellers look it over. But there's no virtual, real heavy virtual work until next week, Wednesday. Thank you for asking that question. Anything else for us? Okay. With that said, we really appreciate your time, whether you were able to join us at 3:30, which I know feels like an awkward time, or if you were able to listen to us later. Thank you for taking the time. We will continue to over communicate. I am really sorry if my emails are annoying, but I really want to make sure that you keep getting information so it stays fresh. Who do I contact if I don't have login information? For Power School, please email me and I'll forward it. We'll send you the paperwork. I can send it to you as a PDF. So you can email me or Miss Kelly or Miss Bellairs, and then there's a PDF. We'll save it in our computer and send it to you, and you'll have it. Yeah, I know the district is trying to do a lot with technology right now, and I think they're just like some pieces are falling through. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'll make sure that either we solve the problem or forward it to technology to solve the problem. But login information we can do for you. Can we know the favorite soda and candy of each of the teachers? In lieu of giving apples. I will work on that. Favorite. I'll put beverage, because some of them, obviously, appropriate school beverages. Favorite beverage and sweet treat. I will put that down. So candy or sweet treat. I will find out and I will get back to you. Got it. Anything else for us? And when I forget, please email me because I wrote it down, but oh, yes. Anything else? Okay, we think you're fabulous. I obviously think your students are fabulous because I brought them all in, but they are having a really nice day. They're probably gonna be tired tonight, and then they gotta come back right again tomorrow. But B group, get ready for an experience because we will have it all down by the time we get to B group. I think things worked pretty well today. You can ask your students. Lots of hand washing, cleanest your student has ever been, and the cleanest I've washed my hands. I need to start putting lotion on. And then our building is just the cleanest it's ever been. So those desks have never looked shinier than they do right now. So thank you for saying thank you, and you are welcome. And we look forward to our next will be like curriculum night, which will be in a couple weeks, and I'll send you out a link, and then you'll get to meet all the teachers. It'll be very exciting. Yeah, so that will be the first time that you get to see these faces, because even your students, they don't know what their faces look like probably, except for our little video that we put together because they're seeing only masks. So you'll get to meet our staff, and they're wonderful. But I hope you're having a great, great day, wonderful start to your week, and we look forward to working with you and working with your students.